Okay, roll call.
Fizzle. Here. Neal.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Luce.
Here.
Bergen.
Here.
Hadley. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Idaho.
Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak at this meeting for any items that are not on the agenda? I will make note that when we get to item 6, I will allow for some public comments prior to the council discussion. Do you have anybody there, Chad, that wishes to speak on something other than what is on the agenda?
Yes, I do.
On the consent item for the art house mural.
Okay, just,
Steve Kelsey, 500 Center Avenue, Decorah.
Can't hear him.
hey, Chad, we cannot hear him. And if you could just turn around and look at the camera, that would, yeah, there you go. That'd be great.
Okay, Steve Kelsey, 500 Center Avenue, Decorah. Will we be able to comment on the pink mural at the art house and it's, instead of it being on the consent agenda, so public comment can occur?
I think the question to the council is the potential of moving the, which one is it, number H in the consent agenda to the regular council meeting versus having it on the agenda.
I would make that motion.
Okay.
Second, Carlson.
We've had a motion and a second. Do I have to do a roll call on that, Chad?
No, you really just need one person to agree to take it off.
Okay. Okay, so we will move H to the first item on the regular agenda, which leaves the other items for the consent agenda. Chad, you want to read those?
Are there any other comments from the public?
Are there any other comments? I don't hear any, or I don't see any, so. And then my question, Chad, for you is, do you have your microphone on?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
And they consist of not working very well. The consent agenda consists of, so they don't. The consent agenda consists of minutes of the August 3rd, 2020 council meeting, claims, renewal Class C liquor license for Ruby Hut, including Sunday sales, outdoor service area, catering, and living quarters privileges. Still typing out on me. Renewal Class C beer permit for Oniota Co-op, including Class B wine and Sunday sales privileges. Renewal Class E liquor license for Walmart, including Class B wine, Class C beer, and Sunday sales privileges. Consider professional services agreement with Urban Engineering for design and construction of Pole Line Road Bridge. Consider a site plan review, reason Moose Island Drive, Decorah Community Schools, softball complex renovations, and item H has been taken off for its own consideration. Consider a C3 commercial design review. Actually, 107 West Broadway Street, Art House, paint murals on north and east sides.
Okay, the one question I have, did you say, what'd you say about G? Somebody needs to work with the microphone because you're not as clear as you have been in the past.
I just read G as part of the consent agenda.
Okay, and then it was H that you took off. That's what you heard. Okay, do I have a motion for the consent
This is
agenda?
Luce. Luce would move the consent agenda as revised.
Second, Carlson.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
This is Ross. I would
Okay, who's talking?
This is Ross Cadley. I would like to discuss item G on the consent agenda. I had an earlier discussion with Chad on on that item, and I wanted to make sure that we have an understanding that a 28E agreement or some sort of agreement would be drafted prior to final approval to handle the maintenance and day-to-day service of the restroom facilities at the softball complex.
I think, Chad, can you reiterate?
I did have a conversation with school officials. They are open to the concept of the 2080 agreement. So
Okay,
with city staff and school officials, we will draft the 2080 agreement. We do have something similar with the schools for the tennis courts, so I think it'll be very similar to that document.
so the question was for G, a 2080 agreement, correct?
It is
Yeah,
very hard to hear the people in the room.
Hey, Chad?
I think the council can consider agenda item G, and we'll work on a 2080 agreement, bring that back at a later date.
Hey, Chad, you need to, we're having trouble hearing you and anybody talking. What kind of an adjustment can Chopper make with that bigger microphone if need be, please?
I think you might want to just look at stuff. He's got a problem. I know it's going to be an issue. I think the maps, just until we get the full fix in here, I think you're going to be.
I'm 6 feet away from him, so my microphone is cutting out. It is not my mask.
Now, Ross was
Like
more
you're
clear.
loud. Yeah, it's like you're loud, coming in loud and then fading away into nothingness.
Why don't the two of you, all three of you come sit here? We will move up there.
Yeah, that would, I think that would help a lot. We'll wait till you get repositioned, then we'll go back to the consent agenda. I just want to note that I was at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and they have some of the same issues we do. I don't know if that's any consolation for you, but
Too hot or they cut each other out. I think it's three of them. I don't think
It's no consolation, Lorraine.
just wondered. All right.
Yeah, so what I was saying about the 2080 agreement, did everybody catch that? That we will work with the school staff on developing the 2080, similar to what we have with the tennis court arrangements, and we will bring that to council at a later date. A 2080 agreement for the use of that land, just for the sake of those here maybe don't have the history. The softball complex, the Extreme West ball field is a softball complex, is on city land, but it is school infrastructure and facilities. And so it is appropriate to develop a 2080 agreement for the ongoing maintenance and care of those facilities. Such an agreement is not currently in place. And why that is even maybe more pronounced now than before is that the school is looking to make a significant investment in that property. And the restrooms that they're proposing would be proposed to be public restrooms with public access, even when the ball field itself is not being used. So to Ross's point, we will develop a 2080 agreement, bring that back at a later date. In my opinion, I don't think it needs to hold up item G as far as the site plan review and renovations and improvements to the ball field.
And I was not asking for a delay. I was just asking for a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you for moving to the table. That's much better.
Yes.
Okay, so
There
we're
was
looking,
also a comment in the background that the adjustment, need to be a Board of Adjustment situation on the fact the school plan encroaches upon the setback. And I
Yeah,
think assured that that would be taken care of in the next Board of Adjustment meeting.
yeah, Steve, thanks for bringing that up. I think part of the third baseline bleacher area currently encroaches over the setback line, but it certainly will with improvements as proposed. And so just to make sure we're clear in the record, I do have that item on the agenda for the next Board of Adjustment meeting for them to consider options on a variance for that setback. Again, just on the third baseline bleachers.
okay, so I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, you have a motion by Luce and a second by Carlson for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel. Bergen.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will go to considered C3 commercial design review for 107 West Broadway Art House paint murals on north and east sides.
And Mayor, you have at least one person here who wishes to speak to that, and
How
Steve
many?
Kelce. At least one,
Okay,
maybe others, I don't know.
can you give some background on that, please?
Yeah, so, because the artwork is proposed for the C3 district, I have asserted over the years as zoning administrator that such murals or art on the sides of buildings needs to go through the C3 review process, as we've had in place for just over 15 years or about 15 years. And I think that for two reasons. One, it is in the C3 district, and while the C3 code itself doesn't specifically speak to murals, it does speak to art and colors and paint and those types of things. And so I think it's extremely important that these types of projects go through the C3 review process. The second reason why I've asserted this for the Planning and Zoning Commission over the years is because I think these types of things need public discussion and public discourse. And by providing at least an opportunity on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda and ultimately affirmation by the City Council, that public process is engaged. In the last couple of years, we've also engaged the Historic Preservation Commission in this review process because the Historic Preservation Commission worked hard to put the downtown district on the National Register of Historic Places. And so in my background notes, a couple council persons pointed out that I stated, staff believes a very public discussion should be had before allowing any permanent changes impacting the look of a building or the historical character in the downtown district. And what I mean by that is engaging the commissions that we have that are designed to advise the council in that process. And so that has happened here. This project was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. It was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And now it is being reviewed for affirmation by the City Council through that established C3 process. Understanding that murals are not necessarily spoken to explicitly in the C3 review code or design guidelines. Paradoxically, you have a recommendation for approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you have recommendation that the artwork not be approved from the Historic Preservation Commission. So the council can weigh in on that matter, but Steve Kelce is here, and I'll let him speak further since he acknowledged that he wanted to. This will be pretty powerful here to pick you up, so.
And then just say your name and your address, please.
Steve Kelsey, 500 Center Avenue, Decorah.
Thank you.
The Historic Preservation Commission did weigh in with a letter to P&Z and basically more of a negative response and asking that something of this size and scope be reviewed by more community input, at least, since we have something that is intended to cover the sides of two of the sides, south and east of an existing building that's especially basically one block from our historic district and similarly close to the Phelps Historic District. Since this project is something that will be with us, we have ghost signs in Decorah that are over 100 years old. So we have other things that will stay around for a long time. So if this is going to be something that's going to be public view for an extended period of time, it would seem at least prudent that there be some kind of a sunset clause, because I would be willing to bet that the tenant of the building does not have a lease that probably is more than perhaps 3 to 5 years. And yet they're proposing something that could last in our community's view for as long as some of the other ghost signs that exist. And we have the issue of this being painted over an existing metal building with a baked enamel finish that is probably at least 15 years old on the metal itself and oxidized. So the opportunity to try to get a paint substance to adhere to that for any length of time is very questionable. There have been other metal roofs in Decorah that have been repainted and then subsequently replaced because the paint did not stick. So if we don't have some kind of at least a sunset clause that will allow for that signage, if it deteriorates significantly, to either be removed or maintained, we've got another problem that's going to exist on our hands. We have spent a lot of time, I was part of, as a Historic Commission member, on the C3 design code review. We spent a lot of time about the revisions that are either have been before you or coming before you on the Chapter 15 revision. Chapter 15, 040, 050G, specifically on color for our C3 district, as it currently stands, says the color of buildings should work in harmony with other C3 structures and should maintain the unique quality of the downtown. The accent color should be complementary, should complement the primary colors. The revision suggestion changed that slightly and said they should maintain the unique historic qualities of the downtown. Permanent materials like brick, stone, and metal should not be painted and should remain or be preserved as close to original or existing finish as possible. That's the existing code and the proposed code. So we have an ordinance that talks about this conforming or blending with our historic district. Our historic district is an important community aspect. Part of our tourist business is because we have a unique, very attractive downtown historic district. This does not fall within the confines of the district and its boundaries, but yet is very visible and with as much exposure in footage and square footage as we have with 2 building sides. We have probably the equivalent, if I look at some of the billboards that exist around in places where they're permitted, it's probably the square footage of perhaps 4 different billboards painted and standing at street level instead of above ground. I know that there's been comments by 3 of the property owners, and I think another one of the council members will address those communications rather than me. But those are my comments personally, and reporting what the Historic Commission had to add.
Hey, thank you. Do you have, I know, Chad, you weren't at P&Z. Is there somebody there that can report the discussion at P&Z?
I don't think there's a member of P&Z here, no, but I did drop the minutes from that meeting into the council packet. Shannon Durbin is here from the Art House if you'd wish to hear from her. Do
Okay.
you wish to hear from her?
Well, I'd like to have, I have not looked at the minutes. I was at the meeting for P and Z. I know the one thing that they proved it on was that it did follow the theme or the mission of what that business is. And they were, their report, unless you can state it any differently from the minutes that you've read, that they were encouraged by what that could bring to that particular area as well. I would like to hear from Shannon. She has a brief statement.
Yes.
Sure. I'm able to answer any questions, but there was.
Can you just state your name, please?
Durbin.
Shannon Durbin.
Hmm?
Okay, thank you.
I think that there is concern over the longevity of the mural. We hope to maintain that throughout. We don't have a 3 to 5 year lease. We're in the process of purchasing the building, which Pete Espinoza can attest to. And this isn't in the historic district. And yes, we put a lot of thought into it. We've made sure that it shares our mission and who we are. We're a kind of fun, creative place. Tourism is boosted through mural projects in places like Dubuque with murals similar to ours. I did print off some of Matthew's mural work that he's been doing in Decorah. I wasn't sure if maybe the sketches were just, I don't know, not visual enough. But we're not going to have anything that, it's not going to be a sloppy mural. It's going to be very well done. We're not putting anything there's a lot of things in art. We're not doing any nudity, no negative, promotions of bad habits. I don't know, no words hardly at all. So, yeah, so we've been thinking a lot through this. It tells the story of Art House through different symbols, and it's got a colorful palette, but we're continually working on that. And yeah, I'm here for any questions.
Have you contacted all of the adjacent property owners to the northeast and south?
I have talked to the Johanningmeyers. We talked briefly during an interview, or not an interview, through a walkthrough of properties about a year ago, and I had just mentioned the murals. We weren't in the process yet, but I emailed them just a couple of days ago, letting them know that that we are in the process of this and wanting to know if they wanted to see the designs. They said they'd already seen them. So, and then I talked to the mechanic across the street as well, and he parks, or has the cars that he works on parked right in front of our building often. So I wanted to make sure that he knew that if we did this, that we were going to need to just have the space cleared for a little bit so that we didn't get any paint on anything, because we didn't want to hurt any of those cars there. So.
Shannon, did you hear back from him once he saw the design?
Yeah, he is not in favor.
Okay, that was my thought as well.
All three of the adjacent property owners, Johanningmeyers, Brunings, and Dan Bohr, are not in favor of this.
And for the record, I did receive, this is Andy Carlson, received a call from Dan this morning, and he was concerned. I guess where my concern lies is that I was under the impression that from the P&Z meeting that the neighbors were supportive of this. And then come to find out, I don't know if there was just a misrepresentation or what happened, but they are definitely not in favor. So I don't necessarily have an issue with the mural. It's more the plain fast and loose with the truth, I guess, is where my issue may lie.
I can talk to that too. I think at the P&Z meeting, they asked me if I had spoken with the neighbors, and I had told them that I had just briefly with Joe Henning Myers that year before. So I did not say that I had talked to any of them. I want to apologize if I did that in the wrong order. Of course, this is the first mural that we're doing, so I was definitely planning on talking to them. I didn't know if I needed to have something approved beforehand, if it was going to be changed all the way. So my apologies about that. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can keep going from this. But
Other comments from City Council or questions?
Okay, go ahead.
Shannon, what type of paint are you gonna be using to ensure that there's not a physical impediment bonding with the metal?
yeah, we've been talking with Sherwin-Williams quite a bit, and looking at their highest grade of kind of marine quality that takes weathering really well. And we're working on the contract to make sure that that we can keep doing maintenance throughout the years too. I know that Carl Homestead continues to do maintenance on his work that he's done, since 1980s, and we plan on doing the same thing.
I guess my comment, I think a lot of, I guess, the fears that I hear of, I think to myself that, well, it's a business in that building, and I don't think that the business in the building would want the outside of their building to be run down in any way. That doesn't help them at all. So in my mind, I don't worry about that as much. I also, I appreciate, I did a little bit of research, and I think Shannon's pretty spot on that I think murals do have actually a pretty interesting tourist attraction to them. I looked at the murals. I think that they're a story to be told. And I also don't feel like it's in my, I shouldn't be, of course, censoring art, that these are art murals that the art house, which is in line with its mission, wants to install. Essentially, they want to do an art installation of their building, which to me is not a historic building. It is a metal structure in the middle of downtown. And so to me, I'm all for the murals, and I'm excited to see how they turn out.
This is Johanna, and I appreciate murals. My Instagram feed features the Dubuque murals that Shannon referenced because I enjoy posing in front of them and taking pictures of them, which I think is one part of their purpose. And additionally support the idea that this particular mural that's proposed intertwines with the mission and purpose of the organization. In general, I'd look for ways for our city to encourage and offer opportunity for expression of multiple kinds, and artistic expression being particularly prioritized in my mind about that. And so I don't have concerns about this at this moment.
Chad, have you gotten any written comments?
I've not received written comments. I did have a conversation on the phone with Dan Bohr, and as Shannon said, he's opposed. That's the only comment I've had.
Did I pass on one from Leah Lovelace?
Mayor, there were several emails in support of the art in the mural.
Okay.
Those are in the Dropbox or have been forwarded to council.
Gotcha. Any other comments or questions from the City Council?
This is Ross. I just wanted to say that I'm also in favor of the mural project. I did participate in the in the historic preservation C3 design process, I do feel that there is a spot for design review in the C3 to make sure that we ensure continuity and whatnot. But at the same time, when I travel to places like Dubuque or Baroka, and I look at their historic districts that are registered as well, when we go to Dubuque for conferences for the council, what do? We wander around and look at street art. For my building on Water Street, I have applied through the same program to look at doing a mural on the back of Amundsen's, which is a white stucco space. So I know that lots of time and work has gone into the C3 design review process, but I don't feel that art and the C3 design process are necessarily mutually exclusive, and that we have regional great representations of public art to look at that coexist well with nicely restored historic downtowns.
Any other discussion?
This is Luce, and I would also concur that, especially since it's outside of the historic district, maybe can be seen from it, but I think that it is in keeping with the business, and there's a consistency there in the design request, and I would move to approve the design.
I have a motion to approve,
This is Bergen. I'll second.
seconded by Bergen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Carlson,
No.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Chisel.
No.
Okay. I was not aware of the grant that they got, so at one point, I don't know if everybody else knows about that grant, but perhaps more information forthcoming for what that involves. I'd be interested in more information on that.
So I'll work with Shannon to have her come back at a later time to speak to the council about the grant program. There is a flyer in your Dropbox packet about that program.
Okay, I'd be glad to go and look at that too. Thank you. Okay. Now we're on to consider a request to close parking spaces in the 200 block of West Water Street, converting parking spaces to outdoor dining and seating areas.
Mayor, this item came in late last week. There are at least two businesses as follow-up to the council's conversation about allowing more free use of parking spaces and whatnot downtown. Magpie Coffee House and T-Box Sports Bar and Grill have jointly applied at least for the parking space between the bump out and the bike rack on Water Street, for that space to be used as outdoor dining for their establishments. And at this point, without any more detail, they're willing to share that as their businesses tend to kind of bounce back and forth of sometimes they're open, sometimes they're not. They're open at different hours than each other or whatever. And so my understanding is right now their request is for that one parking space between the bump out and the bike rack to be shared and worked out between the two of them.
Can I ask
Yeah.
go ahead.
Say it loud.
Yeah.
Sorry, Emily. So Randy chimed in
What
and
about liability waivers, so the city is not responsible if somebody's driving by and a rock or dirt and debris blow up into your meal or whatever?
And so I think the way that the city would handle that, first of all, at least Mike Bachman indicated that he would put up whatever barriers the street department or the city might require. And as we've talked it through with staff a little bit, we would require a right-of-way permit, which then does require the insurance and that goes with that. So.
And garbage, that's one complaint that I get repeatedly on weekends down by Impact Coffee.
Hey, Randy,
We
can
can't
you
hear
come
you.
up by the microphone, please?
Okay. The
Thank you.
complaint that I'm seeing right now with outdoor dining downtown is
Thank you.
more Impact Coffee area, especially on weekends, because they're not putting out additional garbage cans, and then the city garbage can is overflowing and it looks terrible. So I would request, if we do this, that they also help us out there, especially on weekends.
This is Ross. I did talk to both T-Box and Magpie, and they know that the street department only picks up the garbage on Mondays and Fridays, and they're having their staff check the opening of shift to be taking the garbage out and taking it to the back. So the owners have agreed to self-service because they know that we don't have adequate facilities to handle the traffic. I also talked to Jeremy Brill with the street department, and we don't have additional garbage cans that we can retrofit at this point. But I think as long as the business owners are willing to self-police in the best interest of customers, we should be good.
Well, if they're not open inside, they have extra garbage cans that they can set outside too.
Right.
How, can I ask you a question? How easy is it to move the bike sharrows? They're not asking this. I'm just curious if they like this plan. I'm just curious what it would be to move the bike sharrow over one spot, so then they would have that bigger area as opposed to having two spots and the bike sharrow. Because I think the original request was for the two spots.
You're talking about the bike rack, Emily?
Yeah.
Not those bike
I'm
racks?
sorry. Yeah.
Well, that gets bolted down, so it involves
Okay.
drilling and bolts and things like that. Not the end of the world, but we don't like to poke a lot of holes in our streets if we don't have to.
No, and like I said, the original proposal was for two spots. Now they're just asking for the one. So
Well, part of their request, if they would go to two, I saw a diagram earlier that was for one space on either side of the bike rack,
I believe that was
leaving the bike rack there. But I think they would be fine with just the one for right now.
as long as I'm chatting, this is Emily. I think it's really important. I've said this many times that we find ways to help our downtown businesses and, sort of institute the best practices for COVID times that we know of, which is being outside and using our public spaces as innovatively as we can. And so I'm all for working with them to make the parking spaces work for them.
I think too, when you're considering some of these too, is how much parking it's taking away. I don't particularly see that in this case, but the parking on the street is at a prime as well.
Andy here. I believe it supports public health and the businesses downtown economically.
If we're taking this parking place out, though, how does the council feel about the 4 on Winnebago that are set up for just one business? Because today when I went through at 11 o'clock on this block and the one directly to the east, there was one open parking place at 11 a.m. this morning. And those along the Donlin side were open, nobody there. Plus they've got a dumpster out in front and a reserved parking place for their contractor. Or they put a step ladder out there to keep his spot.
You're talking about Donlin's, Randy?
Yes, on Winnebago, we should pull the parking. They
Sure.
do have medical or a prescription pickup spot that I'm okay with leaving that, but let's open the rest of it up because there are plenty of other businesses right in that area that do need the parking.
I would say, since that item is not on the agenda, that we reserve that conversation for a different time. Sorry, Randy.
Yeah. That would possibly should come up at the next city council meeting perhaps, so that we can kind of clarify some of the reserves that are still in place and maybe not in place.
I would move to accept the request to close parking space on Water
A
for
second.
Magpie and T-Box to utilize.
This is Emily and Neil, and I second it.
Okay. Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Fizzle,
No.
Bergen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, for the ordinance 1257, an ordinance mandating the use of face coverings in public places within the city limits of the city of Decorah. Prior to the council discussion, I'm just going to make a brief comment, but then allow some limited public input. I want to make sure that we do have input, public input on this, since there's quite often times we have a public meeting about it. So I want to make sure that's covered. At that time, I'm going to limit the conversations to 4 minutes. Since I'm not here and Steve's not like, where are you, Steve? Oh, you're over there. But I'll attempt to watch that. And then I will turn it over to the council. I just wanted to make note, just the fact that how long this process has been and how much discussion we have had about it, and that both on the local, state, national level, it's been a very hard one for me as mayor to consider, obviously because of the governor's position, which I requested for her to consider. But also on the same, when you're balancing on the same side, you've got CDC, World Health, Iowa Department of Health, and statistics that have not shown a flattening of the curve. And I think we've tried, I'm all in favor of citywide campaign for it that would be following this as well. But I think that with the fact that schools and colleges and the increase in tourism that we've had in our community, where I would have preferred a resolution or a strong recommendation, such as the public health put forth, I support the council by signing the resolution. That being said, I'll at this time, I want to make sure, Chad, can you acknowledge a couple of the letters from constituents that wish to be read into the public record, please?
Yes, Mayor, you want me to read them or just acknowledge and identify?
I know the one wanted to be read. I don't know about the one that you got today.
Well, they both requested that they be read into the record, but you give me direction on that. One is from Jody Neese, 303 Water Street, downtown business owner. She requested to be read into the record. It feels like they should be read into the record. The other one is Jennifer Ward, Dr. Ward, president of Luther College, and her request was that it be read into the record as well.
And the Faith Coalition letter also requested that you read the record. If we're going all the way, we might as well go all the way.
I can't, Chad, or Ross, I can't exactly hear you.
He said that the late email from the Faith Coalition also requested to be read into the record.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting question. Are these, if they're in the Dropbox, are they automatically put into the minutes?
No,
Can we type them into the minutes?
no.
This is Johanna. I would request that they be read into the record. At least 2 of those individuals indicated they were not able to attend in person this evening and would have spoken if they could.
I agree. They should all be read into the record. I agree.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that input.
To be clear on Kirk's point, I will read into the record those that indicated they wished them to be read into the record. I received probably 20 or 30 emails today. Not all of them indicated they wished to be read into the record. They just wanted to be heard and forwarded to the council, right?
Right, I understand that. We'll be almost doing some tallying to look to see what type of responses we've each had, but I'll go ahead and read the two that you have.
Well, if the Faith Coalition one indicated they wish to be read into the record, I will read that one as well. I will read them in the order in which they were received.
Thank you.
The first one is from Dr. Jennifer Ward, President of Luther College. Dear Mayor Borowski and City Manager Byrd, I understand that the City Council is voting on a potential mask ordinance for Decorah on Monday. Since I will not be able to attend, I would like to offer a comment as part of the council discussion. I would request that you share this message with other council members and have it read into the record on Monday. As president of Luther College, I'm keenly aware of the impact our actions have on the city of Decorah, both in terms of its economic health and in this era, its public health. With roughly 2,000 students who are mostly not regular residents of the city and over 500 employees, our ability to function in person depends on being able to do everything in our power to mitigate risk caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. To that end, we have implemented a mandate that all students, faculty, staff, vendors, and guests wear face coverings, preferably masks, while on campus. If our actions are not consistent with behaviors beyond our campus borders, however, we know that it will be harder to ensure discipline regarding COVID-19 mitigation measures. If Luther College experiences a widespread infection scenario, we would have to move to a remote learning model as we did last spring. For the good of our educational aims, student experience, and the economic health of both Luther and Decorah, we hope to avoid that. Our first priority, however, must remain public health. Thank you for your consideration. Yours in collaboration, President Jennifer Ward. The second letter received was from Jody Neese, and she also requested that this letter be read into the record. Jody Neese is a business owner at 303 West Water Street in Decorah. With all due respect, I'm not sure I understand the premise of educating the public, air quotes, on wearing face masks. It seems to be an insult to the intelligence of the people of Decorah. After 5 months of having the discussion of face masks front and center in any type of media, how can we not know? Of course, with everything about this pandemic, there is no clear direction on any issue. You can bring up any number of sources to agree or disagree with your view. People will believe what they want to believe, and that's their right. Mandating face coverings in public places is one thing. Mandating it in private business is totally another. While sanitation and disinfecting may be new to some of you, it is what we as hairdressers are required to do. We are governed by the Iowa Department of Health and the Iowa Cosmetology Board. Protecting our clients is what we do, always, pandemic or not. We have done what has been asked of us. We closed for 12 weeks for your protection. We disinfect beyond necessary. We have moved chairs so that people are social distance. We will wear face coverings because it's our choice. Respectfully, Jody Neese.
Okay. I will allow verbal comments.
We need to, there's one more.
One
Oh,
more
I'm
letter.
sorry. I apologize.
Greetings, Chad and Mayor Borowski. In the body of the message below and attached as a PDF, I have comments from myself and other clergy and lay leaders of faith-based communities and organizations in the Decorah area on the ordinance to require face coverings in Decorah. We ask that you forward this message to all council members. We ask that it be noted in council that I sent the email during the council discussion of the ordinance. We ask that our email be read into the record should the council take public comment on the ordinance. These comments were generated this morning, Monday. They reflect the views of the leaders who had a chance to see it and consider it today and have signed below. We do not have time to consult with the larger leadership teams of our congregations and organizations. but we felt it would still be valuable to hear our perspective specifically as leaders. As such, though, know that there will be people in our congregations who disagree with face covering requirements, and that there are leaders within the Decorah Area Faith Coalition who do not agree with such requirements as well. We are grateful for your good and hard work on this important matter. Thank you. The body of the letter that they signed says, to Mayor Borowski and the Decorah City Council, we write as clergy and lay leaders of faith-based communities and organizations in the Decorah area in support of the proposed face covering mandate you are considering today. Faith-based communities and organizations in our area have been leaders in expanding the use of technology for gathering as community, exploring creative possibilities for outdoor spaces, limited and distance indoor gatherings, and normalizing the use of face coverings. We have helped people think through what it means to be physically distanced and socially connected in these times. We value the face covering mandate from the city, in part because we need support for our ongoing work. A more consistent message across our community, especially from community leaders, is what is most needed for the sake of public health. Inconsistency or silence creates room for doubt and mistrust. We trust the science that tells us that widespread use of face coverings could be a major factor in limiting the spread of the virus, shortening the length of these quarantine measures and saving lives. We are compelled by faith to respond to this with active care for the common good through our individual actions, collective choices, and leadership. Thank you for your time and consideration of this letter and for your care for our community. Signed, there's about 15 or 16 names on here, but the right one, or the first one, is the Reverend Ann Edison Albright, Director of College Ministries and College Pastor, Luther College. The Reverend Amy Zolk Larson, Pastor, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Decorah, Dean of Upper Iowa River Conference of Rostered Ministers of the ELCA, Northeast Iowa Synod. The Reverend Dr. Humani Kang, Pastor, Decorah First United Methodist Church. The Reverend Ellis Arnold, Associate Conference Minister, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota Conferences, UCC. The Reverend Marion Pruitt Jefferson, Visitation Pastor, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. Kate Narvison, member, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Professor at Luther College. David Jordish, member, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Professor Emeritus at Luther College. Dr. Paul Edison Swift, member, First Lutheran Church, Decorah. Amparo Network Coordinator, Northeast Iowa Synod, ELCA. Carol Birkland, member, First Lutheran Church, First Lutheran Representative on Decorah Faith Coalition. Karen Martin Schramm, member, First Lutheran Church. Michael Blevins, founding member, Decorah Area Faith Coalition. Ellen and Craig Cutting, members, St. Benedict Church. The Reverend Peter R. Kowitz, pastor, Decorah Lutheran Church. Liz Rogg, member, Decorah Area Faith Coalition. Karen Carlton, lay pastor, Kelmer and Borough, UMC. Terry Sparks, member, Decorah United Church of Christ. Catherine Thompson, vicar, Luther College, vicar of children, youth, and families, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. That concludes.
Thank you. I'll just note that for myself, and then I'll call on other council people, that just with emails and texts, I had 26 yes and 12 no. That doesn't count the people that I've talked to. I think I need to make a comment also that though that represents a wide variety of the religious-based organizations, that we did receive a note later who was not in favor of representing a different affiliation as well, but I believe that note is in the Dropbox. So I can just, council want to start? Do you want me to just go around and ask?
Well, are there other public comments that you want us to hear first?
I didn't hear who said.
Mayor, there are people here who wish to speak. What is your criteria?
I will, let's hear from the people there. If they come up to the microphone and state their name and address. How many of you got, Chad?
Show of hands. How many want to start? About 10.
Okay, yeah. What I'm going to do is, because I want to get this on to the council too, I'll give, I'd like you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay. First one. Name, address, please.
I'm Joanne Eggy from 501 Winnebago here in Decorah, and I represent many, many neighbors, friends, groups, and I am taking on the responsibility of putting it out here in my name. And I'm going to read it because I do not want to misquote anything. This is an insulting, ridiculous threat to all great, responsible, hardworking people of Decorah and Winnebago County that have spent their lives building up a good town and community for all of you. Do you not believe the majority of our businesses, companies, owners, workers, and citizens have the brains and responsibility and the desire to do the right things for friends and neighbors here in Decorah without a stupid threat of a fine and an arrest? The business people, by the way, are doing a fine job. They are informing all their people. They are doing an excellent job of taking care of all of it. This action is seen by most as a power play by a few to control the many and force their ideas as a law for all. You are showing great disrespect to all who provided you with a good place to live, a place of intelligent, responsible people. This is not Russia, controlled by fear and fines. This is the United States of America with personal rights, good sense, and a desire for a healthy community. It's not right what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person.
Next. Come on up and state your name and address.
My name is.
Yeah. You have another? Okay.
My name is Jason Madison. I live at 403 West Broadway in Decorah here, and I appreciate being able to be heard today. I'm standing here today to offer science. I'm an engineer, and I love facts and figures, and I would hope that everybody would choose to make decisions based on facts and figures. This is data that was gathered as of last Thursday. Only 3% of ER visits are for COVID symptoms. Only 1.9% of active cases of COVID are ever hospitalized. Only 0.14% of Americans are hospitalized with COVID. Only 0.7% of Americans are currently a positive case. The median age of death in the United States is 78, which is also the average life expectancy in the United States. I read that wrong. The median COVID death is 78, which is also the average life expectancy in the US. We have conducted 41 million more tests than the next country has. And before anybody wants to ask too many questions about the source, this all comes from the CDC, from Johns Hopkins University, and a website, Worldometer. You can just do simple math. So the question becomes, how much better than these numbers do we need to do to flatten the curve? I'd also like to offer that there are, on an average in the United States, 3 million people who die annually of all causes. As of last week, the last time I checked the numbers, a mere 160,000 had died of COVID. It appears to me that we should have had a much larger, it's barely a blip on the 3 million deaths that we already normally expected. This virus is certainly real. I've given you some science. If you choose to vote for this mandate, I offer that you are choosing against the science. You're choosing against basic humanity. And one more thing I'd like to offer, and I'll be finished. The one place where masks and sanitation has been perfect, has been covered in all cases, has been fully utilized, is in our nursing homes across the country. And yet, every nursing home is the largest source of COVID spread. So if we want to take the facts into consideration, the facts are that masks are not stopping this virus. For that reason, I suggest that we do not enforce this on the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, you could come right up. That would be great.
My name is Sean Devine Meyer. I live at 1577 Hickory Road. It is rural Decorah. I have two. Yes, I work at the post office. They handed out these masks. This one, I don't know if anybody can screen so you all can see it. Comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, USA. And it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points. Excuse me, 8, 6, 7, 8 bullet points. Number 1, anyone could be a carrier of COVID-19 and not know it. Number 2, you play a role in protecting the community against COVID-19. Number 3, this face covering will help reduce the likelihood of you spreading the virus to others. Number 4, this face covering does not replace the N95 used in healthcare settings and should not be used when caring for those with COVID-19. This face cover. Number 5, this face covering is one way to combat the virus. Social distancing, hand washing, and other CDC recommendations should also be followed. Number 6, fabric touching skin, 100% cotton face covering contains silver and copper. Number 6, excuse me, is that 7? 6, if skin irritation occurs, immediately stop using face covering. If irritation persists, consult your primary care provider. Number 7, be mindful when wearing this product if you have lung disease like emphysema or chronic heart disease. Stop using this product if you notice difficulty breathing while wearing it. Number 8, machine wash warm up to 15 times before discarding. Dry high, do not use bleach, chemicals, or disinfectant to wash this product.
Oh, yeah.
Second product that was handed to me.
You got about a minute left.
I'll cut to the chase.
Thank you.
It says on here, this product is not a respirator and will not provide any protection against COVID-19, in parentheses, coronavirus or other viruses or contaminants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
I'm Rich Reiser. I have a operate a business at 911 South Mill Street. And I just want to say that I think that if you do this mask mandate, that you're infringing on a lot of people's rights, the right to choose. I offer in my office that if people want to wear a mask, they can wear a mask. If they want me to wear a mask, I will wear a mask. But it should not be mandated to anybody that they have to wear a mask, because it's their right to wear it or not to wear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
My name is Scott Carlson, 111 East Water Street. Some of the things that I was going to share have already been said tonight. I don't understand when we can social distance, but if we're outside riding bike or in a public space, walking the dog and spending time with our kids, that we still have to wear a mask when especially if there's no one else around. So I'm confused. I don't see the merit in that. And I definitely think that it's an insult to our intelligence and infringing on my rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
I'm Marta Kelsey, 500 Center Avenue.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Because you're requiring it, but my eyes are burning because I just had cataract surgery. How are you going to know who should have a mask, who shouldn't have one? I looked up on some of the other cities that have already passed this, and they're already starting to have protests in Dubuque against it. And who pays the taxes? Or, I mean, how's this all paid for? Who's going to check it? Is my home, when my people come to visit me in my home or in my car, one of the cities said you have to have your people, your own family can be in your car, but someone else you'd need a mask. So how deep does this go now? How deep will it go in the future? And I just think it's wrong because I am an American and I am 74 years old. I have the right to choose. I don't believe the masks are the answer at all. And that's my opinion. I don't think it should be made into a legal thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Next.
Could I interrupt for 1 second, Mayor?
You sure may.
Could we read the ordinance as proposed?
Sure.
There's some misinformation out there that maybe needs to get cleared up.
Okay. I think we've gone through at least half of the people that are there.
Yeah, I feel like I just want to add to that. I feel like people are commenting on things that actually we're not going to be proposing a mandate for. So I guess I really appreciate that, Andy. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. What I'm going to do is I will read the whereases, and then if one of the council persons would like to read beyond that, that would be great. If you want to split it up, that'd even be nicer.
Sure.
This is ordinance number 1257, an ordinance mandating the use of face coverings in public places within the city limits of the city of Decorah, Iowa. Whereas as mayor and city council of the city of Decorah, we took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Iowa. And whereas Article 3, Section 38A of the Iowa Constitution grants to municipalities the power to determine their local affairs and government not inconsistent with the laws of the General Assembly. And whereas Chapter 364 of the Iowa Code reaffirms the constitutional grant of home rule authority to municipalities to exercise any power and perform any function it deems appropriate to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and property of the city of its residents, and improve the peace, safety, health, welfare, and conveniences of its residents. And whereas a city may exercise its general powers, subject only to limitations expressly imposed by a state or city law, and the exercise of a city power is not inconsistent with a state law unless it is irreconcilable with a state law, Iowa Code Section 34.2 and .3. And whereas on March 17th, 2020, the governor of the Iowa issued the proclamation of public health disaster emergency after multiple cases of COVID-19 had been confirmed in Iowa, and the Iowa Department of Public Health determined that the community spread was occurring within the state. And whereas positive cases of the virus continue to increase at an alarming rate in Winnebago County and Iowa at large, whereas many individuals with COVID-19 are asymptomatic yet risk transfer to others, wearing a mask, a face covering greatly reduces risk of community spread. And whereas the Center for Disease Control, CDC, has determined that face coverings are a critical tool in the fight against COVID-19, It could reduce the spread of virus, particularly when used universally within communities. And I'm going to ask somebody to read the next section.
I got it,
Mayor,
Lorraine.
I'll read it. Johanna, I'll got it.
Thanks,
I'll
Chad.
read the, yep, I'll read
Thank
the
you.
rest of it. Whereas the Winnebago County Medical Center, Winnebago County Public Health, Mayo Clinic, and Gunderson Health Systems support the wearing of cloth face masks in public settings. The proper use of face masks helps to reduce the spread of COVID-19 to vulnerable adults. And whereas on June 28th, 2020, the CDC issued the following guidance on mask use. Number one, the CDC recommends that people wear cloth face coverings in public settings and when around people who do not live in your household, especially when other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. Number two, cloth face coverings may help prevent people who have COVID-19 from spreading the virus to others. Number three, cloth face coverings are most likely to reduce the spread of COVID-19 when they are widely used by people in public settings. Number four, cloth face coverings should not be worn by children under the age of 2 or anyone who has trouble breathing, is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove the mask without assistance. And whereas voluntary measures have failed to yield significant progress in flattening the virus curve, and whereas Decorah is a highly promoted tourist destination within the Driftless area in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, which is bringing thousands of visitors to our community from out of town weekly during the pandemic. And whereas the Decorah City Council and the Mayor, Lorraine Borowski, prefer a proactive approach to handling the pandemic crisis and would like to be preventative against outbreaks here in our community as opposed to reactionary. And whereas on July 25th, 2020, the Decorah schools have announced a return to learn plan that includes the requirement of masks in schools. And whereas Luther College, the largest employer in Decorah, has a mask requirement. And whereas the purpose of this ordinance is to minimize the need for future reclosing efforts based on public health data, including the closing of public schools. And whereas many businesses already require masks in their place of business, including Decorah's largest retailer, Walmart. And other business owners have indicated they would require face coverings if the local jurisdiction would implement a mandate. Now, therefore, the Decorah City Council mandates the following. Number one, all persons present within the city of Decorah shall wear a face covering that covers their nose and mouth when inside a business building or public space, as ordered below until further council action. Number two, except for individuals exempted as provided herein, all individuals within the city of Decorah shall wear face coverings while in an indoor business or public indoor space, to include but not limited to the following. A, businesses, which include, for example, but are not limited to restaurants, grocery stores, pharmacies, hardware stores, and retail stores, must require that all workers, to include but not limited to owners, employees, contractors, vendors, volunteers, and interns, wear a face covering when the individual is within any area open to the public or within 6 feet of another person. Customers are required to wear a face covering before entering the business and must wear the face covering until exiting the business. Businesses is broadly defined to include entities that are sole proprietorships or employ or engage workers, including private sector entities and nonprofit entities. B, participants, staff, and spectators at gyms, fitness centers, and sports facilities must wear a face covering at all times when the individual is within 6 feet of another person. For purposes of this order, gymnastics facilities, yoga studios, fitness centers, and climbing walls are considered sports facilities. C, individuals at entertainment venues must wear face coverings when the user is within 6 feet of another person. When the user is seated and not within 6 feet of another person, they may remove the face covering, but must wear the face covering when walking to or from their seat and while standing in or walking through public areas such as lobbies and restrooms. D, individuals must wear face coverings while riding in public transportation or private car services, including taxis, ride shares, and carpooling. This requirement does not apply in a private vehicle that is being used for private purposes. E, social distancing protocols should be in place of at least 6 feet whenever feasible. Item 3, exemptions. This order does not apply to any of the following. A, facilities operated by the county, state, or federal government. B, medical and long-term care facilities that already have face covering requirements. C, children 2 years of age or younger. D, individuals actively eating or drinking. E, individuals temporarily removing the face covering for identification purposes. F, individuals unable to wear a face mask, a face covering due to medical, disability, or developmental reasons with a doctor's recommendation. G, individuals speaking to an audience, whether in person or through broadcast, as long as the speaker remains 6 feet or more away from other individuals. H, individuals communicating with an individual who is deaf or hard of hearing or has a disability, medical condition, or mental health condition that makes communication with that individual while wearing a face mask, face covering difficult, provided that social distancing is maintained to the extent possible between persons who are not members of the same household. I, participants in youth sports are exempt from this order, but subject to all requirements under the state's executive orders. J, individuals who are alone in the following circumstances. Alone in an office, room, or cubicle with walls that are higher than 5.5 feet when social distancing is maintained. A vehicle or the cab of heavy equipment or machinery, or an enclosed work area. In such situations, the individual should carry a face covering to be prepared for person-to-person interactions and to be used when no longer alone. K, when a public safety worker is actively engaged in a public safety role, included but not limited to law enforcement, firefighters, or emergency medical personnel, in situations where wearing a face covering would seriously interfere in the performance of their public safety responsibilities. I, individuals receiving a service, including a dental examination or procedure, medical examination or procedure, or personal care service that cannot be performed or would be difficult to perform when the individual receiving the service is wearing a face covering. Workers performing services for an individual who is allowed to temporarily remove their face covering under this provision must comply with face covering requirements in the applicable industry guidance. Item M, individuals at their workplace, school, or home when wearing a face covering would create a job hazard for the individual or others as determined by local, state, or federal regulators or workplace safety and health standards and guidelines. Item 4, face coverings will be required in outdoor situations where 6 feet social distancing cannot be maintained and people not actively eating or drinking, to include walk-up windows and drive-up windows, and in outdoor social events open to the public. Item 5, for purposes of this order, face covering shall mean a manufactured medical grade or homemade cloth covering that fully covers an individual's nose and mouth. The term mask and face covering are synonymous. If a cloth face covering is chosen, appropriate use of a cloth face covering includes A, a snug fit, but comfortable against the side of the face. B, completely covers the nose and mouth. C, is secured with ties or ear loops. D, includes multiple layers of fabric. E, allows for breathing without restriction. F, can be laundered and machine dried without damage or changed to shape. 6, businesses shall not require customers to provide proof of a medical condition, mental health condition, or disability, or require customers to explain the nature of their conditions or disability. 7, businesses and organizations that are open to the public must post signs at entrances instructing customers of their legal obligation to wear a face covering while inside the establishment. 8, businesses and organizations are encouraged to provide masks for customers at no or nominal cost. 9, restaurants and bars are encouraged to take advantage of outdoor seating. 10, this is an education forward policy. However, enforcement, public education regarding the importance of wearing a mask to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 shall be a primary purpose. Penalties may be assessed for violations of this order as provided herein. A, no business that is open to the public may provide service to a customer or allow a customer to enter its premises unless the customer is wearing a face covering as required by this order. and business that are open to the public must post signs at entrances instructing customer of their legal obligation to wear a face covering while inside. B, any individual violating this order shall be subject to a municipal infraction with the following penalties. I, verbal warning for the first offense. 2, written warning for second offense. 3, $10 fine for third and all subsequent offenses. For purposes of this order, any violation of any provision of this order can be considered a separate offense. And then repealer clause, severability clause, and when effective.
Would anybody like a copy of yours?
Thank you very much.
Wanda's going to go make some copies. You have another speaker here if you wish to hear from them.
Okay, what is the council's preference? We also, I don't know how many people online want to speak. If you know you want to speak, perhaps enter your name in the Zoom. That would
Mayor,
help.
you have 4 more here in person.
What's the council's?
We can let him speak, but I guess I would prefer we went down to a minute and a half or 2 minutes.
Okay.
What other people think?
Okay, the next person come up and we will go for 2 minutes because there are people that may want to speak online as well.
You're down to what, 4.5 days?
Okay, next one's up.
My name is Joe Hamill. I own Hamill Jewelers at 108 West Water Street here in Decorah. And after listening to Chad read that, all I can say is, oh my God. How can anybody remember half of that, what was said in that? To infringe on people's rights, to tell them you have to wear a mask, or mandate that you have to wear a mask, doing this, doing that. It's going to get to a point where if I'm out mowing the lawn, I have to wear a mask. Well, that ain't going to happen. And if I'm going to get fined for not wearing it or whatever, then you might as well start writing the tickets out. I have people come in the store and the first words out of their mouth is, do you require a mask? I do not, and I will not. These are adults, and they have the right to choose whether they want to wear a mask or whether they don't. I don't wear a mask in the store for obvious reasons. In my trade magazines, robberies in jewelry stores have gone up a huge % because people walk in the store with a mask on. And God forbid if that happened to me, and they said, well, give us a description, I'd have to say, well, he's medium height and he's got a flag mask on.
Hey, no.
Well, we had to go someplace. You know, you couldn't do it. It's the first time in my life I ever went into a bank and asked for money and they gave it to me. You know, it's just this whole deal with the mask. Dr. Fucci here some time ago said, wear a mask. You have to wear a mask. You have to wear gloves. Don't touch surfaces because you can get it. All of a sudden later on, well, yeah, it can't be contacted with touching the surface. And you don't have to wear a mask.
You got about just a few seconds, Joe.
And well, bottom line is, I don't think this mandate should go through. I think it's a waste of time and effort, and I think it's going to make a lot of people mad, and it's going to hurt Decorah as far as not only people coming in to visit, but as far as tourism.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Next.
My name is Deb Munson and I live at 109 Monroe Street here in Decorah. And I was curious about the fines. How are they going to let people know that they're going to get a ticket or a citation, or are the police going to be writing these?
So this is an education forward plan. So actually the first time is a verbal warning. They would have a written warning. So it would really, you only get a fine if you're apparently a multi-repeat offender of not wearing one, right? So I mean, the idea isn't to fine people. The idea is to educate people to wear masks.
Oh, it's for education only. If it's for education only, then how can you implement a fine?
As I said, it's a 3 warning system, as Chad read. So there's a verbal warning for the first offense, a written warning for the second offense, and then the third offense would issue a fine, much like a parking ticket.
Oh,
But the
okay.
civil
So
infraction.
who's going to write the citation?
That would be on our public safety, as are all civil infractions.
You didn't get my question. I said, who is going to write the ticket? What police officers? Are they going to be out ticketing people?
Yeah.
You will be. Okay, then is it set up so that we can go to, will the city attorney be prosecuting these?
He's there. You can talk to him.
Well, will the city attorney be prosecuting these? I think I hear crickets.
Sorry, if you really want to know, no, it's like getting a parking ticket, ma'am. It is exactly like getting a parking ticket.
Well, then where is our right to go before a magistrate and say, I'm not guilty? And who's going to be keeping account on all of us?
So I would just add, I mean, this isn't necessarily a time for debate, but I would add that this will fall into the municipal infraction category. And so it follows just like any other civil infraction, municipal infraction process.
Well, I want to be able to go before a magistrate and plead my case. Are you saying I'm guilty before proven innocent?
No, that
Well,
is
sure
part,
is what
that
it
is,
sounds like.
that is part of the process, but not contemplated at this time.
And my rights should not end where your ordinance begins.
Okay, next, how many have we got left? Maybe. How many are left, Chad?
2 more, 2 or 3.
How about if we take 2?
Take them all. Take them all.
Okay,
Anybody
we'll take
wants
them
to speak?
all. Okay, thank you.
My name is Bobby Frederick, 1303 Michael Drive. And I agree with every comment so far. And I can reiterate all of those. For one, I agree with what was just said. Who's going to enforce it? Are we going to waste our law enforcement's time in enforcing these infractions? Do I have to explain myself if I have a health issue? Am I going to be discriminated against if I have a health issue? If I don't want to wear this because I have asthma, are you going to discriminate me walking on the street saying, hey, he doesn't have a mask, I'm going to get pulled over by the policeman? The policeman's going to stop me and I got to tell him, then I got to tell the next one, then I got to tell the next one. Why, they're all wasting their damn time. The other thing is you got sports that are going to happen, and you're saying you're going to mandate this for some of us, but yet not all of us? So are you going to make these football players that are going to be in close contact with each other wear a mask underneath their helmet because it's in the city?
No. It's actually.
Correct.
It's in the exception.
Well, it's an exception, so now we got another.
How about it?
So we got exceptions. Who's going to govern these exceptions?
Did you have more on your list?
I have lots on my list.
Well,
If
you
this
got about, you're almost to 2, not quite.
not wear face masks because it's going to benefit their business and not cost them money, that should be up to them, not up to you. If I did not feel safe around a person not wearing a mask, I just won't go next to them. If it's like saying, if you don't like the way I talk, don't talk to me. Not, hey, because I don't like the way you talk, leave my shit. That's basically what you're telling tourism. If you don't want to wear a mask, they already are. So good luck, and if you do it, it's a bad deal on you.
Thank you. Next person?
If you actually pass this, does that mean that you guys are actually going to come back to the meeting?
I didn't hear that.
I have one more question. If you guys pass this ordinance, that must mean that you're all going to be sitting up here next week or next meeting because you'll be not scared now.
Thank you. Who's the next person?
My name is Carol Bentley Iverson, 815 Ravine Street, Decorah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have many questions. I have many questions. First of all, I want to say that I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I am very disappointed in the city of Decorah. I but I'll try to make this quick. But I want to know, where did these guidelines originate from? Are they copied and pasted from other cities that have passed these? What about the cities that have tried to pass that couldn't get legal support for it because of the state's rules with the governor? Are we going to be using our taxpayer money to defend this if it comes down to that? Okay, if it takes 5 minutes at least to read, how in the heck are people going to understand and follow such complications? I mean, you can poke holes in every one of these things. Like who determines what's public setting? You know, is that in front of your house? Is it on the street? Is it like 2 inches, 3 inches, 5 feet? What if somebody's within 5.5 feet and not 6? I mean, you know, every one of these are just ridiculous. So, okay, there's a term in there because of alarming increases. Who has defined alarming? If we've had 1 death in Wenatchee County from all these 6 months of being so careful, what is alarming? Okay. Is there an end game in plan? What are we reaching for? 0 deaths throughout the country, the state, the city, the county? What's our end game plan? Is this indefinite? So I'll stop with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Doug Bryce, 603 Day Street here in Decorah. Just a couple of questions regarding mostly the reasoning behind this. The first one would address the need. Why are we able to pass this tonight? And the mayor has written the governor to ask for permission to do this thing. So it sounds like we're trying to pass something that we don't yet have the permission for. If we have the permission for it, why does the mayor need to write our governor and ask for the permission? Number 2, our reasoning that we're using to make this ordinance denies the objective facts of the last 6 months here in Decorah. The peak infection rate, though it may be up in some places, is down. And so we didn't do this in the first 6.5 months, and we still did well here in Decorah. So I would challenge the reasoning, and I would say you're basing a lot of things on hypotheticals and subjective reasoning instead of objective, rational facts here in Decorah. Because we haven't. We hurt our hospital badly financially with something that never took place. The third thing, quickly, is that you're slapping the people of Decorah in the face, telling people how bad they've done, that they haven't done a good job. So we're going to mandate this. We're going to institute something. And we've been doing a fabulous job. And we're not even at the high point that we were. And so objectively, factually, truthfully, it doesn't stand. Your reasons don't stand. Now you can do it, but your feet will be firmly planted in midair on subjectivity and hypotheticals. Lastly, when does this stop? You didn't put no end date on it. You didn't do that. And you didn't, I was a couple minutes late. I have not heard one thing from anybody. I know we're speaking, you guys aren't, but I haven't heard anything about how good the people acknowledging people of Decorah. I just haven't heard that. And this whole ordinance smacks just the opposite. It just tells us how bad we've been. And it's just simply not true. Objectively, pay attention to how your people have been doing.
Thank you. I have one request in the chat room, and that was Randy Iverson. You want to unmute yourself, Randy, and speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. If this ordinance is enacted, which I am not in favor of, but if it is, I would think the city must post signs wherever the city boundaries are, so we would know if we are in violation of this ordinance or not. And I just think it's a poor choice of words to say educate the public, because it does seem like the council or some of the council's talking down to the population of Decorah. And I think we're very smart people. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Are there any, he was the only one that went into the chat room. Is there anybody else? Raise your hand if that's on the phone that wishes to speak. And I do not see anybody else. Do you, Chad? Okay. So we've heard from the public that were present. Now I'd like to hear from the council as far as what kind of response, well, anything from the council would be fine.
Okay.
That was, okay, that's Randy. Okay, thank you, Randy.
We're on the table up here. First off, you know where I stand. I don't feel we should dictate how people run their businesses. There's enough regulations that the state puts on for businesses that should be regulated. What happens once they get off the lease line from public property and inside their door is their business, and as long as it's being done, they should be allowed to conduct it. Two, I'm not going to go back on my vote from July 20th when I made the motion to present Resolution 3113 to the Winnebago County Board of Health and follow the recommendation of said board. And their said board was Winnebago County Board of Health strongly recommends that all Winnebago County residents and visitors wear a cloth mask. And that that motion was passed unanimously by this council. Thank you.
Oh, Randy, have you had people contact you?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you give a rough idea of like the
outside of the chain letter, it's probably been 20 to 2.
20 no to
20 no's to 2 yeses.
Okay.
I do respect what Dr. Ward has done, but that's the business of Luther College. And I would hope that they would, since they got freshmen coming in for this first month, that they would, try to work to keep them on campus, not as an official quarantine, but as an unofficial quarantine before they start out into the community, but get them acclimated to campus first and what the college has to offer up there before they come out into the public.
Okay, who's next? Ross, do you want to talk? You're right there.
Sure. I'm in support of the mask ordinance. I feel that it is similar to, I feel like we're in a position similar to smoking indoors. Could people make the choice not to smoke indoors? Yes, they could. But, science did show that secondhand smoke, carcinogenics, did cause cancer in the long term. You didn't die right away, but public health policy changed and educated people to stop smoking indoors. It also, peer pressure also makes a difference. Hey, you can't smoke in here. So the enforcement is largely peer pressure. It's not so much, you don't hear about the police being called to T-box because someone's lighting up a smoke. It's social pressure. And just from a personal standpoint, my wife does work in a skilled care facility, and my business was closed for 2.5 months because of COVID-19. I cannot afford to be closed again in a shutdown fashion, and so I'm supporting anything that we can do to mitigate risk, knowing the fact that there may be, we may be being overly aggressive in public health,
But at the same time, if it stops a limited percentage that triggers a shutdown again, I'm for it.
And Ross, can you talk about the number of people that have contacted you one way or the other?
My ratio is probably the opposite of Randy's. But most of the people I have talked to were in the healthcare community and in education. A lot of the teachers are very concerned about how they can enforce masks and just concerned about their well-being as well because of the situation regarding substitutes and whatnot. We're going back into remote learning.
Okay, thank you, Ross. Let's see, Steve, I've got you up over here to my right.
I can recall working at CAMCAR for 2 years when before the statewide mandate of no smoking inside took place and having to ingest my coworkers' secondhand smoke for 2 years. It was disgusting. The local company could have done something, but yet they didn't do anything until someone passed a law. And so I'm very much in favor of that mask mandate to give the school district, to give retail an out if they want, that the city said we have to do this. Because I think some people just don't get it, that their personal freedom doesn't really matter as much as the health of the entire community. And being a vulnerable population person, I haven't been at a meeting. I'm not going to be at a meeting, even if everyone in the audience and all the rest of the council are wearing masks, because of my population, or who I am. So I'm very much in favor of helping people learn how important it is to put a mask on. Thank you.
And did you have many people contact you?
I had no one in favor of not mandating. I had 17 in favor of mandating.
Thank you. Andy.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I don't think anyone wants to do this. This isn't something that any of us want to do. I look at it as a necessary evil. And I think that there's a lot of unknown going into this fall. Some projections say it could go up substantially. I'd rather be safe than sorry. I also think this isn't some wild foreign concept. We have 34 states with mask mandates, over 240 million Americans under a mask mandate. I am in favor. I would say it's about split, maybe 50-50 for individuals that I've talked to or heard from. And at this point, I believe with the return to school, Luther and our public schools in St. Ben's, that I think hopefully this isn't something we have to do for a long time. I'd like to see this, maybe even in a month. Do this for a few weeks, see how school starts. If there's no outbreaks, then, maybe we did overstep our bounds a bit. But like I said, I'd rather be safe than sorry. If this saves one life, it's probably worth it.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Johanna?
They're not going to probably take anything from.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening and sharing comments, and the number of people who have attended our previous committee meetings and planning meetings, as well as email. One of the reasons I love being in Decorah so much is that you all care enough to show up and share your voice as a part of this process. I'll echo some of the comments that fellow council members have made and add just a couple of things. I think that we operate right now without a set of social norms around how to approach another individual who may not be masked. If we are with a family member who is in a vulnerable population, where we would feel safer if a mask was worn. Unfortunately, business owners and organizers of events are faced with a tough decision of trying to read the pressures of their audience and make personal hard decisions about if masks will be required or not, often worrying that they're risking earning resources for their family. I'm supportive when we're in these places of unknown, that government does have a role in creating and helping us set policy. Like Andy, I hope that this is not a long-lived effort in our community, but rather a short, specific fall and winter effort here that puts prevention and early intervention of a public health crisis first and foremost in our life. Wearing a mask, even being required to wear a mask for me, is a way for me to give and support and care for those around me. And I am hopeful that as mask wearing becomes the norm, as it will as our students, both at Luther College and the Decorah schools, go back to school with expectations that masks are worn throughout the day, that our community will wrap our arms around those students and model those same masking behaviors, so that we can create a social norm out of this. I'd encourage you to be giving of your spirit to your fellow community members in wearing masks. I support the many meetings and intense discussions that have gone into the draft of the ordinance in front of you all tonight, particularly around that spirit of education forward. And I'd be remiss without offering a very large thank you to our public safety officers in Decorah who have used verbal communication to maintain group sizes as we've been under proclamation throughout the last few months. I'm encouraged by the communication we've had with Chief about a continued emphasis on education and verbal communication. And I believe that passing an ordinance like this clearly marks Decorah as a city that is being proactive about the health and safety of our membership. And that will matter for the people who live here, and that will matter for people who visit Decorah. And Andy, I think you said it best, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Mayor, I did not count the messages that I received. I definitely received messages both against and in support of this ordinance, probably tipping slightly more in favor.
Okay, Emily.
It's always hard to follow you, Hannah. Sorry. I echo what she says for sure. I think the words that come to my mind is this idea of being proactive. And I was on the Board of Health call, and I heard what the Board of Health said, and I was actually really impressed with their words in suggesting that when it comes to something like COVID-19, one would much rather err on the side of caution than to look in the rearview mirror and think you should have done more. So over 150,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. And I think one of the advantages of living in a small town in the middle of the United States is we can see things coming at us a little bit better than other places can. And so we can look across our country and see how communities have reacted, and either in a proactive way or in a reactionary way. And I think that one thing we could all agree on is we certainly don't want to wind up as Arizona or New York City or Florida has been. And when someone asks how many deaths are acceptable, well, quite honestly, none are acceptable to me. My job as a council member is to protect the citizens of Decorah, and I consider Winneshiek County to be also my jurisdiction of helping to protect. And the thought that one person would die in our community and we didn't pass a mandate would keep me up at night, to know that I haven't tried to do everything since this epidemic started. I've been thinking of ways and communicating with community leaders and people of how can we help you. And from the beginning, one of the first things the hospital said was help us to get people to wear masks. And in the last meeting that we had, where like Lorraine, you and Johanna and I were on a call with over 20 community leaders, all of them help us get people to wear masks. Yes, wearing masks is what we need. Our community leaders, our businesses, they're asking us to get people to wear masks. And while I agree, some people do a great job, not all people do a great job. And when you go somewhere like Rochester, or even the chief was talking about going to Colorado and South Carolina, where they have mandates and you see everyone in a mask, that's a good job, right? That is everyone working together and pulling for each other. So I feel very strongly about the need to have a mandate. I appreciate Ross's sentiments about smoking. I think anytime there's any type of what people feel like is an infringement on their rights, we all have to do a double check to understand that we live in a country where we have individual freedoms, but we also have community responsibility to one another. That's what makes us Americans. Not that we are individually free, but that we are Americans together in one country. And I think that is really important for us to recognize that masks are about being together and allowing us to be together, because without them, we're going to be apart for a whole lot longer.
Thanks, Emily. Kirk.
Oh, did you want to know my count?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Only because I wrote it down. I didn't count how many people were on the call with us, Mayor, but I think you probably know when we had the call with,
yeah.
So I felt like that was pretty overwhelming. I was with a hospital call a couple months ago, and I think they were overwhelming support for masks. I actually had 4 business owners contact me in favor of masks, one of whom said he would really appreciate the mandate because he knows that as a business it requires masks. It can be uncomfortable in the social pressure of not requiring one, and one said that they would really like to require one, and a mandate would make it easier. I've had 25 people contact me personally to tell me that they're in favor of the mandate and to thank us for the work we've been doing on it. I've had 2 emails prior to today's emails list that were against the mandate, and then there were several today that I made it through, but I didn't go back to count. I think there were probably 3 today that were against it, and then everyone that I heard tonight.
Okay, thank you, Emily.
Yep.
Kirk.
You know, I've been doing a lot of reading about this particular issue in terms of vaccine and in terms of all the public health measures we can take. And I'm convinced that as a country and as a community, we are not going to crush this thing until we have a vaccine. And the only thing that we can do between now and then, which could be December, could be January, could be never, is social distance and wear masks and protect one another. And your constitutional right does not include making others sick because you don't want to wear a mask. During a global pandemic, we need to do everything we can to protect one another and to keep others safe, particularly those of us who might be prone to illness or who are elderly and have otherwise compromising health problems. So this is really a small price to pay to keep businesses open. I mean, we closed down for, the only reason we don't have 500,000 deaths already in America is because we shut things down for 3 or 4 months. And now all of a sudden we're open and we're going to throw caution to the wind and allow people not to protect one another. That's crazy. That's all I have to say.
Did you have people that contacted you?
I had a number of people contact me. I would say it's mixed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we've heard from a lot of people. We've heard from the council. My one question for the council is only that for clarity of the ordinance, just for consideration, if that is something you wanted to work more for clarity, or if you're with the way it is. But
Mayor,
yes.
Mayor, this is Chad. I did have, when you're talking about clarity, I did have a conversation with school officials. There is one section where they would like to interject a little bit of clarity in terms of language if the council is going to consider the ordinance. And that is on page 2 under exemptions. Item 3, exemptions, sub-item I. Participants in youth sports are exempt from this order, but subject to all requirements under the state's executive orders. School officials have told me that they would really appreciate adding the phrase interscholastic and youth sports so that it's more collaborative with their efforts as far as athletics go.
Can you tell me again which one that is?
Page 2, item 3, exemptions. Sub-item I, participants in youth sports. I think the last one here.
Okay. Okay. I'll go ahead unless anybody has anything else and read the consideration. Consider ordinance 1257, an ordinance mandating the use of face coverings in public places within the city limits of the city of Decorah.
I would move ordinance 1257 with the inclusion of the suggested edit from the school district. This is Luce.
This is Bergen. I would second.
Further discussion.
Lorraine, this is Johanna, and I would just add just respond a bit to your question about clarity earlier, and really want to respect the comments that we've heard tonight and from others that this can be confusing. For those of you on tonight, Lorraine's led a fierce effort internally through our work to try to get this ordinance into plain speak, and we're getting there, right, Lorraine? I do believe that there is an important effort both in the education campaign that's happening in other conversations, both at the council and community leadership level, but also just in the requirements for posting of information about this ordinance in Decorah, that we do our best to summarize requirements. And I just wanted to support, Lorraine, your effort to that, and think there's some continued work we can do even this week around that.
We'll discussing.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Aye.
Chisholm,
No. No.
Neal,
Now, who was that last one?
Chisholm.
Okay, thank you.
Who's got the dog?
I think the one in the yellow pot.
Okay, I called Chisholm, he's a no. Neal,
Yes, aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. I'll look forward to a couple things. One is that campaign for education. I encourage people from the city who are confused or want more clarity to contact your city council people, any of them. And patience for getting the word out and knowing that we have work to do with education wise. And so I'll look forward to hearing more from as far as the campaign is concerned too. Okay, now we go to consider board and commissions appointments. Openings, the Communication Utility Board has 1 seat. Planning and Zoning Commission has 2. I'd like the City Council to be sure to review the applicants that are in the Dropbox, and I'm going to close accepting the application since we've got, I think it's 4 altogether, which would be, and I'm going to set it for Thursday, and I think that's July 3rd, that will be the last day that I would accept applications for that. But please go in the box and look at all those seats. I was pleased how many people actually applied. Sure.
Don't mean July 3rd.
Yeah, how about July, how about August? July 3rd.
September 3rd.
August.
You want it closed September 3rd, right?
No, I want it closed by.
The mayor intends to close applications on September 3rd, which is the Thursday before the council agenda closes for the September 8th Tuesday council meeting.
Thank you.
I had another question. Sorry, Mayor, this is Emily. Is there also a seat, just because you're making the announcements, my understanding was there's still a seat on the Human Rights Commission, is that correct?
I believe we still have one on the human rights. Is that correct, Chad?
I'll have to double check, but I think so, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then notice of mayor's intent to appoint Civil Service Commission Larry Stevenson. We will be talking to Larry on that as well. And I'll bring something forward when I know more on that. City department heads, Chad.
For the sake of brevity, I don't have much more to add. I know some department heads have dropped a report in the Dropbox. Generally, though, things are going pretty well. The summer's winding down for lots of programming. Street projects, though, are just ramping up. While we're in the midst of Locust Road, we have a couple other projects that are getting ready to roll here soon. Quarry Street, Commerce Drive, and Court Street are a couple of those. So things continue to be busy there. Otherwise, kind of status quo for the departments.
Okay. Wanda? Oh, sorry.
Just wanted to ask if Andy has anything to report how the pool procedures have gone in terms of helping people stay safe.
Yep, he's coming. Wendy, you might have to come up here.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Actually, I would say overall things have gone really well. Not as big a crowd as some years, but there's lots of variables at play. And one thing we had this summer was almost every day was in the 80s and sunny for the past 2 months. So that probably means a lot more than we take into account. But yeah, so, and really a big thank you to the community. There's lots more rules, lots more things to sort through. We had lots of parent, adult volunteers that came in and helped us get through all those things. And so we owe a big thank you to the community for coming in and accepting that for the way it was. And we're at the end of the season. A couple of adults have stepped forward and got their lifeguard licenses that'll keep adult lap swim open through the end of the month. I think maybe later than we've ever been open. And so that's nice for them. And the public swim will close on Friday here this week, and school starts Monday. So get your last swims in.
Sounds cool, Andy. Thank you.
You bet.
Wanda.
Okay.
All right, just a couple of things here. First of all, the special event application you approved last week for that pandemic event, the Busium event, that is being postponed till spring. So that will not be happening in September as planned. I am going to ask Randy to set a finance committee meeting. We need to discuss a continuing disclosure policy for our bonds, and it's something that requires education of the council and city staff on an ongoing basis. Anyway, I'd like to go over the policy with you, and I think that would be easier to do in committee than actually during the council meeting. And I'd also like to talk to you about a segregation of duties policy that I completed here a number of months ago, and I've just been kind of waiting to bring that to your attention, and hoping this COVID thing would maybe be over soon, but that doesn't seem to be working in my favor. So I would like to kind of go over that too. So
Wanda, what was the type of policy?
segregation of duties policy. Remember
Thank
I
you.
talked about this about
Yes.
a year ago? Yep, and so I have finally got that complete. Yep, our movie. So anyway, I want to go over that with council. I have completed the annual street finance report. That will be on your agenda for the next meeting. And I've completed the paper version of the annual finance report. That software was just released last week, and I haven't had a chance to go online and get that done. So that may or may not be ready for the next meeting, but those things are coming up, and of course then the TIP report has to be done too, but that one I haven't gotten to yet. Anyway, I think that's all I have.
Okay, now I'm gonna go backwards up. Hey, Kirk Johnson, do you have anything to report or need tonight?
Nothing.
Okay, Emily.
I just wanted to send out a heartfelt amount of support for Cedar Rapids and all that they're going down in sort of heartland of Iowa. I was down. The pictures are extraordinary and it's horrible. And I guess as a council person, I think about our own community and hope that nothing like that happens here, but know that certainly we're thinking about our neighbors to the south.
Yeah, thank you very much. Johanna.
Thanks, Lorraine. I'd like to take a moment to announce that my family is in the process of purchasing a new home in Decorah and approaching a pending move. And when that purchase is complete and a move has been made, I will no longer be a resident of Ward 5 in Decorah. And so I'm preparing to submit a written resignation to Mayor Browski after this purchase has gone through and details are finalized, with an effective resignation date of September 9th. I'm sharing this all with you tonight because I know that council will have a decision to make in terms of how to fill a uncompleted term on council. And I'd like to provide both you and community members and residents of Ward 5 additional opportunity to consider stepping forward and expressing interest in serving out a term on city council. And so, Lorraine, you can just expect that in writing in the near future. At this time, I just want to say that it's been an honor and an absolute journey to serve, and I look forward to these continued final weeks, and we'll have more words for you all later. Also, just offer a thank you to fellow council members and to John Anderson for the work that went in numerous meetings prior to the ordinance that we discussed earlier tonight. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate that. I'm glad. My only piece that I'm glad is you're not moving out of town. You're in town. We'll be getting, Chad and I have talked about the scheduling for working with that, and we'll get that out to the city council as soon as we sort of talk some more about that. Let's see, who have I not included? Oh, Andy?
Nothing in the, thank you though.
Did I miss somebody? Ross? Did I miss Ross? Did I miss Randy?
Street committee meeting right after this. Don't go away.
Okay. I believe that is all. Thank you very much.
I think Randy and Steve. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Finance committee for next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, the 26th.
That's Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 26th at 4 p.m.
Okay.
Can we start it at 4:30? So I'm gonna have a hard time getting into town anymore until 4:30. I'm curious, can we bump it a half an hour so I can be there?
I was trying to be respectful of staff time so they're not staying after, but.
Who's on finance?
So we all are on finance.
No, we're on personnel.
No, you're not all on finance.
I don't think I'm.
Kirk, Andy.
I'm not on finance then, so don't. Yeah, never mind.
And,
I probably.
We'll set it.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. We got that straight? Okay. Steve.
I wanted to again thank the citizens who presented today and their concerns. It's vital, the citizens' involvement and input to things. So thank you so much. And secondly, I wanted to commend the street department for the cleanup and the fastidiousness of the yard waste site. It's joy to drop things off out there now because it's so organized and so easy to get around. So thank you, street department.
Okay, so I guess people who are here for the street department stay on or whatever. How's that work, Chad?
We're just gonna stay on and use the same connection, but we'll take about a 2-minute reshuffle here, but otherwise we're gonna, so.
Okay.